You ever feel like you're fading? Like the person you are is just shrinking, bending, reshaping itself to fit someone else's world? That was me. I tried to be everything he wanted. I laughed when he made jokes I didn't even think were funny. I stayed quiet when he lingered too long on someone else's smile. I told myself this was love, that patience was strength, that giving too much of myself was proof of care. But inside it was hollow. Every time he looked at someone else, every time a message went unread for hours, a small ache started somewhere in my chest. Quiet but relentless, like a stone being pressed into my ribs. I convinced myself that my loyalty, my endless attention, my careful, unobtrusive love, if I was perfect enough, attentive enough, silent enough, he would finally see me. He would finally care. But the truth I avoided was that love isn't measured in perfection. Love isn't something you earn by shrinking yourself into someone else's expectations. I wanted him to be happy so badly that I stopped asking if I was happy too. I replayed our conversations like a movie that never ended, dissecting my tone, my words, my reactions. Was I too much? Not enough. Did he notice the corners of me I kept hidden just to keep him close? And there I was, caught between devotion and self-erasure, believing that his distant charm, his fleeting attention, was a reflection of me, not of him. I saw the way he smiled at someone else and felt it was my failure, not his indifference. I held my breath when he was near, waiting for approval, craving the smallest acknowledgement, as if my worth could be measured by his fleeting interest. It's exhausting, carrying someone else's happiness like a fragile vase, praying it doesn't break, because if it does, somehow you feel it's your fault. But slowly, in the quiet spaces between longing and despair, I realized something. That ache wasn't a flaw in me. It was a signal, a line drawn in the sand telling me that love that demands erasure is not love at all. That being perfect for someone else, smiling when it hurts, bending when it breaks you, isn't devotion. It's surrender. And surrender can't be disguised as love. I started noticing myself again. The small things I'd ignored, the feelings I'd buried to make room for him. I realized my heart didn't have to shrink to fit in the shadow of someone else's presence. And the quiet ache? It transformed into something fierce. A recognition that my value isn't in how unbothered I can be, how endlessly I can give, or how patiently I can wait. My value is in feeling fully, standing fully, and refusing to vanish for someone else's comfort. I still cared, yes, but caring didn't mean losing myself. Caring didn't mean pretending I was invisible. And in that realization, I found a weight lifting I hadn't even known I was carrying. I was more than his approval, more than his charm, more than the invisible spaces I'd been filling for him. For the first time, I could see myself whole again, and it was terrifying and beautiful, and it was mine. The first crack didn't sound like a shattering. It was quiet, almost polite, the kind of thing you could easily ignore if you wanted to believe hard enough. At first, it was just small things, little pauses when his phone buzzed, the way he'd tilt the screen slightly away from me, like it was instinct, a quick smile at a message he never mentioned, conversations that ended the moment I walked into the room. You notice these things when you love someone deeply, not because you're suspicious, but because you're paying attention. And I was always paying attention. I told myself it was nothing. Everyone deserves privacy, right? Everyone talks to friends. Everyone laughs at their phones sometimes. That's normal. But there's a difference between privacy and secrecy. And somewhere deep in my chest, something uneasy started growing. Still, I pushed it down. Because when you've invested your heart in someone, your mind becomes very good at protecting the illusion. You start rewriting reality just to keep the story alive. So instead of questioning him, I questioned myself. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was being insecure. Maybe I just needed to be better. That's how the cycle begins. You don't confront the cracks. You paint over them. So I tried harder. My texts became softer, sweeter, more patient. I added extra hearts, extra warmth, extra reassurance. If he took hours to respond, I told myself he was busy. If he canceled plans, I smiled and said it was okay. I became the girlfriend who never complained. The girlfriend who didn't ask difficult questions. The girlfriend who acted completely unbothered. On the outside, everything looked calm. Perfect even. But inside, something was slowly tearing apart. Because no matter how much effort I poured into us, nothing changed. His attention didn't grow warmer. His distance didn't shrink. If anything, it felt like he drifted further away. There were nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the day like a detective investigating a crime scene. Did I say something wrong? Did my tone sound annoyed? Was I too clingy earlier? Maybe I should have given him more space. Maybe I should have been more exciting. The questions never ended, and every answer somehow led back to the same conclusion. Maybe I wasn't enough. That thought is dangerous, because once it enters your mind, it spreads quietly through everything you do. You start shrinking yourself, adjusting your personality, editing your reactions, all for someone who never asked you to, but somehow still expects it. Then one afternoon, Jamie looked at me differently. Jamie had known me long enough to notice the change. The way I force smiles now. The way my voice hesitated before defending Alex. We were sitting across from each other, coffee slowly going cold between us. Jamie leaned forward and said something simple. "You're trying way too hard for someone who barely tries at all." I laughed it off immediately. Defended him. Of course I did. He's just busy. He's stressed lately. He doesn't mean anything by it. Every excuse came out automatically, like I'd rehearsed them 100 times. Jamie didn't argue. They just watched me carefully. Then they said quietly, "You know that feeling you keep ignoring in your gut? The one that keeps you awake at night." My chest tightened. "That feeling isn't insecurity," Jamie continued. "It's your instincts trying to protect you." I wanted to reject that idea instantly. Because if Jamie was right, then the problem wasn't me overthinking. The problem was something much worse. The truth. And the truth meant facing something I wasn't ready to face yet. Because loving someone makes you brave in strange ways, but it also makes you afraid of losing the future you imagined with them. So I kept holding on, even as the cracks widened, even as his words started sounding emptier, even as the little lies became easier for him to tell. Deep down, I felt the first real sting of betrayal forming. Not loud, not explosive, just a quiet, painful question echoing inside my mind. Was he actually capable of loving me the way I loved him? Or had I been fighting alone this entire time, trying to build something real with someone who never intended to stay? That question sat heavily in my chest. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. Love might be powerful, but love alone might not be enough. The moment everything broke didn't arrive gently. It didn't creep in like the quiet doubts that had haunted me for weeks. No, when the truth finally surfaced, it came like a storm tearing the roof off a house I'd spent so long trying to protect. I wasn't looking for it. That's the strange thing about betrayal. The proof often appears when you're not even searching anymore. When you've already convinced yourself that your fears are just imagination. His phone lit up on the table beside me. A message notification. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. But name caught my eye. Selena. For a moment, it meant nothing. Just another person. Another contact. Another harmless conversation, I told myself. Still my chest tightened. Something about it felt different. That quiet instinct again. The same one I had been trying to silence for weeks. The screen dimmed, but curiosity, no, something stronger than curiosity, pushed my hand forward. My fingers hovered for a second before unlocking the phone. And then I saw it. Message after message. Flirtatious jokes. Late-night conversations. Compliments that sounded painfully familiar because they were the same ones he used to give me. "Wish you were here right now. You looked amazing in that picture." A laughing emoji. A teasing reply from her. Selena. Scrolling felt like drowning. Each new message tightened the knot in my chest until breathing itself felt difficult. It wasn't just friendly conversation. It crossed every line he had promised would never be crossed. And the worst part? The timestamps. Messages sent during the same hours he told me he was busy. Moments when I had been waiting for replies that never came. My hand started shaking. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, like the walls were closing in around the truth I had tried so hard to avoid. All those nights questioning myself. All those moments blaming my own insecurity. It wasn't in my head. It had never been in my head. When Alex walked into the room, I was still standing there, the phone clutched tightly in my hand. For a few seconds, he didn't notice anything was wrong. He tossed his keys onto the counter and glanced up casually. Then he saw my face. "What's wrong with you?" he asked. I held up the phone. The words barely came out at first. My voice trembled under the weight of everything building inside me. "Who is Selena?" The room went quiet. His expression changed for only a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to see the truth flash across his face before he hid it. Then he sighed. Not panic, not guilt, annoyance. "She's just someone I talk to," he said casually. "Why are you going through my phone?" That answer snapped something inside me. For weeks I had swallowed my doubts. For weeks I had forced calmness, patience, understanding. But now the anger burst through like a dam, finally breaking. "Don't do that," I said, my voice rising despite the tremble in it. "Don't turn this into my fault." I stepped closer, the phone still in my hand. "You told me you were busy. You told me you were tired. Meanwhile, you were sending her messages like this." My chest burned as the words poured out. Was I not enough? Is that it? I tried so hard, Alex. I tried to be everything you wanted. I stayed quiet when things hurt me. I gave you space. I trusted you. The pain finally cracked through my voice. And this is what you were doing the whole time. For a moment, I thought, maybe foolishly, that he would finally understand. That seeing how broken I was would make him realize what he'd done. Instead, he rolled his eyes. "You're overreacting," he said. Just like that. 2 words that felt sharper than any insult. "Overreacting," I repeated, disbelief spreading through me. "It's just flirting," he muttered. "It's not like it means anything. Not like it means anything." Those words echoed in my mind like thunder. All the sleepless nights, all the effort, all the love I had poured into us. And to him, it meant nothing. In that moment, something inside me collapsed completely. I wasn't just angry anymore. I felt invisible. Like everything I had done to protect our relationship had been happening in a world where I was the only one who believed it mattered. I didn't shout anymore after that. The fight drained out of me as quickly as it had arrived. Because you can't argue with someone who refuses to see your pain. You can't fight for something when the other person doesn't even believe there's a battle. I handed the phone back to him without another word. That silence felt heavier than the confrontation. Later that night, I lay in bed staring into the darkness. The tears came slowly at first, then all at once. Every emotion I had been holding back flooded through me: rage, heartbreak, humiliation, exhaustion. I buried my face into the pillow, trying to quiet the sobs that refused to stop. One thought repeated over and over in my mind. I had tried to be perfect, patient, loyal, understanding. I had bent myself into every shape imaginable just to keep him happy. And none of it mattered. Perfection hadn't earned me his love. It hadn't protected my heart. It hadn't stopped him from choosing someone else's attention over mine. As the tears finally slowed and exhaustion began pulling me towards sleep, a painful realization settled deep inside my chest. Maybe the problem was never that I wasn't enough. Maybe the truth was something much harder to accept. Maybe I had been giving my entire heart to someone who simply didn't know how to value it. The days after everything shattered felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm has torn through your life and left everything scattered on the ground. For the first few nights, I barely slept. My mind replayed the same moments again and again like a broken film stuck on repeat. The messages, the confrontation, the way Alex looked at me when I told him how much it hurt. Alex stayed with me the most. Not guilt, not regret, just irritation. I cried until my chest felt hollow, until my thoughts were so exhausted they could barely keep moving. And every time the tears slowed, the same questions surfaced again. Why wasn't I enough? For a long time, I sat inside that question. Let it grow. Let it dig into my confidence and pull apart every piece of me. But eventually something changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a quiet shift in the middle of another sleepless night. I realized something I had been too afraid to admit before. Trying to be perfect for someone else was destroying me. I had spent so much time adjusting my behavior, my reactions, my personality, trying to become the version of myself that Alex might finally appreciate. But somewhere along the way, I had disappeared. The girl who laughed freely. The girl who spoke her mind. The girl who didn't constantly measure her worth by someone else's attention. She had slowly faded behind the version of me that existed only to keep someone else comfortable. And lying there in the darkness, I finally understood something painful but freeing. Love should never require you to erase yourself. The next morning, I didn't wake up stronger. Healing doesn't work like that. I still felt heavy, still felt the ache in my chest, still felt the temptation to text him, to ask if maybe we could fix things. But instead of reaching for my phone, I did something different. I reached for space. I stopped initiating conversations. I stopped waiting for his messages. I stopped trying to solve his moods like puzzles that were my responsibility to fix. At first, the silence felt unbearable. Part of me kept expecting him to notice the distance, to ask what was wrong, to suddenly realize my absence. But he didn't. And strangely, that hurt, but it also clarified everything. Jamie noticed the change almost immediately. We met at a small cafe again, the same place where they had warned me weeks earlier. This time, when they looked at me, there was concern in their eyes, but also something else. Relief. You finally look like you're breathing again, Jamie said gently. I let out a small laugh. Not a happy one, but a real one. I'm trying, I admitted. And for the first time, trying didn't mean fixing Alex. It meant rebuilding myself. Jamie stayed close through those early weeks. Sometimes we talked about everything. Sometimes we avoided the subject completely and just walked through the city or watched movies until the silence felt comfortable again. Then there was Ethan. Family has a way of noticing the things you try hardest to hide. Ethan didn't push me to explain everything, but he showed up in quiet ways. Random check-in messages, inviting me to dinner, asking if I wanted to go for a late-night drive just to get out of the house. Those small gestures mattered more than anyone realized, because healing doesn't always come from big revelations. Sometimes it comes from people reminding you that you are still loved, even when someone else failed to see your worth. I started doing things I hadn't done in months. Reading again, going for long walks with music in my ears, spending time with friends without constantly checking my phone. At first it felt strange, like I was relearning how to exist outside the gravity of someone else's attention. There were still hard days. Days when loneliness crept in and whispered that maybe I had given up too easily. Days when memories of Alex pulled at my chest and made me question everything again. But each time that doubt appeared, I reminded myself of something important. His happiness was never supposed to be my responsibility. For too long, I carried that burden like it was my duty. Like if he felt distant or restless or dissatisfied, it must somehow trace back to something I had done wrong. But people carry their own storms. And I was finally learning that I didn't have to stand in the rain just to prove I cared. Alex still existed in my life, technically. The distance between us had grown quiet but obvious. His messages became occasional, shallow, almost confused by the change in me. But his moods, his dissatisfaction, his endless search for attention from other people, none of it felt like my weight to carry anymore. For the first time in a long while, I started choosing something different. I started choosing myself. Not selfishly, not cruelly, just honestly. Each small step forward still hurt. Each boundary still felt unfamiliar. But with every day that passed, something inside me grew stronger. A small spark that had nearly been extinguished began to glow again. The realization that I deserved a love that didn't require me to shrink, a love that didn't punish me for having feelings, a love that didn't treat loyalty like something ordinary and replaceable. I wasn't fully healed, not even close, but I had taken the most important step. I had stopped abandoning myself just to keep someone else happy. And that single choice changed everything. Months passed before I truly noticed the change. Not the kind of change you see overnight. Not something dramatic or loud. It happened slowly, in quiet moments that didn't feel important at the time. One morning, I caught my reflection in the mirror while getting ready, and for a second, I didn't recognize the expression on my own face. I was smiling. Not the careful smile I used to wear around Alex. Not the polite one I forced when something hurt, but I didn't want to show it. This one was real, and that's when it hit me. I had survived. The heartbreak that once felt like it would swallow me whole, the betrayal that kept me awake at night, the endless questions about whether I had somehow failed. All of it had passed through me like a storm that eventually ran out of rain. For a long time, I believed the strongest version of myself was the girl who stayed calm while everything hurt. The girl who acted unbothered no matter what someone did to her. But now I understand something different. Being unbothered doesn't mean pretending the pain isn't there. It means recognizing when someone no longer deserves access to your heart. That realization didn't come easily. There were months of rebuilding myself piece by piece. Months where the silence left by Alex still echoed in ways I wasn't ready for. Months where memories appeared unexpectedly and made my chest tighten again. But slowly, those memories lost their power. The girl who once waited hours for his replies no longer checked her phone constantly. The girl who once blamed herself for his distance stopped searching for flaws in everything she said or did. The girl who tried to be perfect finally disappeared. And in her place, someone stronger began to grow. Jamie saw it before I did. We were walking through the park one afternoon, the sun warm against our faces, when they nudged my shoulder with a grin. "You know something?" Jamie said. "You look different." I raised an eyebrow. Different how? Like someone who finally remembers who they are. I laughed, but part of me understood exactly what they meant. Jamie had been there through the worst nights, through the conversations where I questioned my own worth, through the moments when I thought letting go would destroy me. Now, those same memories felt distant. Not erased, just transformed. Ethan noticed it too. One evening during dinner, he looked at me for a long moment before shaking his head with a small smile. "I like this version of you," he said. "Which version?" I asked. "The one who stopped carrying other people's problems like they belonged to her." His words stayed with me long after that conversation ended, because for so long, that had been exactly what I was doing. I carried Alex's unhappiness like it was my responsibility to solve. I treated his attention like something I had to earn through patience and perfection. But now, when I thought about him, the emotions felt different. The anger had faded. The heartbreak had softened. Alex had become something simpler. A lesson, not the center of my story, not the person who defined my worth. Just a chapter that taught me what happens when you forget your own value while trying to prove it to someone else. He was a memory now, and strangely, he felt smaller than I once believed he was. Sometimes I still think about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed quiet when something hurt, the one who believed that loving someone meant enduring anything they did. I don't hate her. If anything, I feel protective of her. She loved deeply. She gave everything she had. She believed in the possibility of something real. Those qualities weren't weaknesses. They were strengths. They just needed direction. Now, when I look at my reflection, I don't see someone trying to be perfect for someone else. I see someone who learned the hard way that love should never require you to disappear. I see someone who understands her own boundaries. Someone who knows that protecting her heart doesn't make her cold. It makes her wise. And maybe the most surprising part of all is this. I'm not afraid of love anymore. Heartbreak didn't destroy that part of me. It refined it. If love comes into my life again someday, it won't be built on silence or self-sacrifice. It won't require me to shrink or pretend or stay unbothered while something inside me breaks. It will be honest, balanced, mutual. And if that kind of love never appears, that's okay too. Because I no longer measure my happiness by someone else's ability to choose me. I choose myself now, every single day. And standing here, months after the storm that once felt impossible to survive, I finally understand something that once seemed so far away. Peace isn't the absence of pain. Peace is the moment you realize the pain didn't break you. It rebuilt you.